Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Law and Legitimacy. It's Wednesday. That means hump day, which means if you're riding a camel, you know that you're halfway down to the other end of your destination. Or if you're as old as I am, you know you're round in third, heading for home. And if you're Mike, you're round in second, heading or first, heading for second. And the life cycle goes on with all its glorious splendor, as all of us, we pilgrims in search of truth and satisfaction, stumble along life's way. So lots going on, in the world. Hard to know where to begin. I guess, one of the things that startles me is, RFK's insurgency, his candidacy to become.
Did you call it an insurgency?
Yeah.
Insurgent candidate. I guess the New York Sun did too.
And, well, that's where I got the idea. It's not like I'm so creative. I just read a lot, and the random associations sometimes sound different, but there are only so many pieces of the known universe, and we players in it express them sometimes by chance. But in any case, I took a look at the headline, and I'm Robert Kennedy, president. Well, all right, maybe. I suppose if you've got that last name, you've got to do something. And so he's going to pick a running mate. And I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers, and I'm thinking Jesse Ventura. So quarterback, formerly the Green Bay Packers, aborted season in New York this year. Maybe he comes back from a torn Achilles. Maybe he doesn't. Jesse Ventura, former heavyweight wrestler, and I think gubernatorial candidate, if not governor in Minnesota. I don't recall. What are these guys?
Yeah, he was elected governor in Minnesota.
And why in the world are we going to even consider these people? And then I'm thinking, well, why not? We've already had a reality TV president, and he's running again. And I looked at the article and I thought, these guys, do they have the experience that it takes to run the country? And maybe it's because they don't, and because we are fundamentally ungovernable, and because people are looking for a way to go from where we were to where we're headed by some means, that they're willing to trust individuals without the usual and customary experience, because we the people are trying to express ourselves in a world of rapid change, in ways that customary forms don't work. You get the sense, in effect, of pouring new wine into old skins, that there is a passion in the world to be known, to create a sense of community, and that the old forms aren't sufficient. And so, maybe Kennedy's on to something. Maybe Aaron Rodgers and Jesse Ventura, given their popularity, given their charisma, are what it is going to take to move the needle in a new direction. It's just odd, and I note the oddity for what it's worth.
I don't think it's as odd. I admit I'm startled by the inclusion of Aaron Rodgers' name, and I think the article says that this is RFK's camp saying that these are names at the top of his list. And what we know about Aaron Rodgers is that he was embattled during, a number of years over the last couple of years, couple of seasons in particular, when the NFL was negotiating its way through COVID protocols, vaccination schedules, requirements between, of the NFL Players Association. Remember, Aaron Rodgers was, very publicly against, pro-choice in terms of whether to take a vaccine. And he was also very outward in his admission at a certain point, when pressure mounted on him sufficient that he needed to make a public statement, that he had gone on his own journey. He consulted with his own physicians, and that he was not at a high risk category, that he was an athlete, and therefore he was not going to make a decision to put that drug into his body, and that everybody should have the same discretion and ability to make the same decision for themselves. He came under tremendous scrutiny for that. But what we know about RFK, despite his sort of anti-Second Amendment stance and his sort of plug in to what we would view as sort of the old world establishment buying through the Kennedy name, we also know that he is a litigator, and he has made a career as a litigator based on suing pharmaceutical companies. And he is actually very in favor of deregulating the industry such that there is no more qualified immunity or absolute immunity for vaccine manufacturers for vaccine injuries. So this, at least on that platform issue, Norm, makes perfect sense to me. And Aaron Rodgers is a beloved member of the millennial demographic that follows sports, that overlaps with Joe Rogan, that is a part of this sort of popular culture and barstool sports era, right? There is that demographic. And so his visibility to me is why he would even mention his name as a potential VP candidate, right?
Well, and so, listening to you, Mike, talk about Kennedy, he comes more clearly into view for me, and he becomes a powerful candidate because he is the classic dystopian candidate. In other words, if you go along and get along with the experts tell you you'll maximize your chances for security. And Kennedy's saying, I don't want to go along and get along with the experts because their opinions may be wrong. I want significance in my own skin. I want to evaluate my choices for myself and make an intelligent assessment of risk without bending to the public health state. And so, if he can get his message out, his, in my view, is a more cerebral, evidence-based, and substantive presentation of the populist impulse than is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is, however, far more entertaining. And I think with respect to how we get our information, it may be that is what makes Trump a more successful candidate.
I
Hey, I
think
want to get
before we move on, though, just a parting thought here for the RFK part of this is that we would not be here but for RFK sensing the urgency of having to run as an independent party candidate. Right.
Mhm.
Recall that RFK submitted to the Biden administration for Secret Service protection, as every candidate, in the last however many years has done, and the Biden administration continually denied his request for Secret Service protection. And then the DNC, as it did with previous candidates, has largely pushed and boxed RFK out. And therefore, there has to be a number of signatures that he needs to glean to even be put on the ballot in the 50 states. And so part of this is just simply trying to get his name recognition to the next level. So I have I don't really have a bad word to say about Aaron Rodgers. I have my own criticism of RFK. But as Jackson Barrett says over on Rumble, Aaron Rodgers is 10 times more intelligent than the ineligible Kamala Harris is.
All right, we'll leave aside that note on ineligibility, Jackson. I think you're wrong, and I know you think I don't give the matter enough attention.
Oh, Freedom Lover says Mike Rowe. I would love that. I would love Mike Rowe to insert himself into politics outside of the umbrella of someone like RFK. I think that he could make waves on his own. Are you familiar with Mike Rowe?
No, but let's move on because there's a lot to talk about today. I want to give you
fine.
What?
I said fine.
No, I mean, okay, let's do it then. But
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Let's do something more interesting.
No, I mean, I wanted to talk. I mean, I wanted to advance our discussion a little bit about about TikTok. I thought Mark Cuban got it right, and I saw the story, or I saw his posting, and I thought, given I don't want to call it the posturing, but the difficulties you and I have had come determining how best to even conceptualize the issue, Cuban raises an interesting point, and that is, I'm concerned about obviously governmental control of information and its tendency to dominate and censor. You're concerned about the effect of this new technology on young users. And so is there a way to address both concerns simultaneously? I think Cubans come pretty close to doing it. Any social media platform that allows users under 18 must publicly publish their algorithms. In other words, parents should be given some insight into the electronic or digital arms into which their children are falling when they tumble online, so that parents can decide for themselves what to do with respect to their kids. Now, that may be seeing the world through rose-colored glasses, because how do parents control anything their children do? And as teenagers develop a sense of independence, and as the world rapidly changes, most of us can't keep up with the technological change. And we even joke here at Law and Legitimacy, what we need is a 15-year-old to help us master the technology quickly, because they'll run circles around us. But I think Cuban is right. And, anticipating the criticism that by requiring companies to publicize their algorithms, they'd be required to give up trade secrets and intellectual property. And isn't that as bad as permitting government to control content? My preliminary answer would be it's not as bad. It might be unsustainable as a matter of law, and it might inhibit the development of new algorithms, because publication would deny the benefits of intellectual property and perhaps deter people from developing new and innovative forms of intellectual technology or intellectual currency. Yeah, I get it, but I think parents should have the right to know what's going on with their kids.
So
I give you credit.
Well, and I do too, reluctantly so, because I think Mark Cuban is, insufferable at best. 7 days of the week, and a clown, probably more accurately. And but Dawn raises I guess a question here that I don't think is necessarily over the target from where I'm standing. Yes, parents should have more visibility and control over what their kids are doing, and they should exercise their role as parents. But I do again remember, the whether we want to admit, failure of the Dare campaign or the Truth campaign or any of these campaigns that were widespread, funded by, non-governmental nonprofits, looking to encourage, young people to make better decisions for their health, a la don't get addicted to cigarettes. And this is my era norm, right? Is don't get addicted to cigarettes. It was, jump rope for heart in our physical education classes. It was find a way to talk to your mom and or dad about, smoking in the house and encourage them to drop the habit. These are issues that kids will actually, they speak this language already, right? To frame this as something that is a burden on parents because now, it's unrealistic to think that they'll be more vigilant and consistent. Publishing the algorithms, in my view, is the first step in allowing young people to understand what they are actually engaging with as a mechanism and how that will affect the way that they encounter knowledge, the way that they engage in communication on these platforms, what is being fed to them to engage with on these platforms, and where perhaps to go to seek a wider berth for an understanding and being able to control their introduction to that and their engagement with these conversations and evolve as a young person into maturity and into the world in a way where their attention span isn't stunted, or they're not looking at the world through this 2D prism on their phone only, right?
Yeah.
That's the big problem that I have. Now, Norm, I will give you credit here because it's becoming clear that the bill that has been branded sort of anti-TikTok is actually ceding to the government the ability, is sort of an extension of the Patriot Act here, right? There's actually a much larger threat, which is if this bill gets signed, this empowers the federal government with the ability to classify these internet outlets and these various mechanisms as something that needs to be taken over,
Mhm.
rested to wrest control of. And so I think in an election year, the fervor and the energy around doing this right now was something that is already sort of half baked in terms of there is widespread criticism of TikTok. Many people want to get TikTok out of the paint, as it were, right now. That is the Trojan horse that would allow something like the subversion of Elon Musk, wielding control and discretion over X in a hotly contested election year. That's my view on it. It's
Yeah.
also perhaps a strategy because Trump has come out against this entire measure. But imagine that, you don't have to imagine very, very much here, but imagine that Joe Biden doesn't actually have a viable campaign message. And this bill gets signed and makes it to his desk, and he actually vetoes it as a measure to actually get the younger vote in this campaign year.
I'm listening to this debate we've been having about this and watching events unfold, looking at RFK aligning with non-traditional politics and feeling very much as though 2024 is a senior prom without volume. I mean, these guys are just dancing to no music. And I feel like the political system has sort of failed us. And there are these issues that require serious consideration. And what we're getting is posturing. And I direct those comments primarily at Donald Trump. I mean, it's very difficult for me to take seriously the notion that he is a policymaker, because I just don't think he has a policy other than serving as an empathic mirror for the frustration of canaries who are suffocating in the coal mine. So I'm hungry to see a new candidate, and I'm hungry to have discussions like the ones we are right now about TikTok, because I think that somehow this is where politics has to go. Hey, what's up? It didn't make the short list of topics, but the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. So there have been some leaks from its files, and candidly, they're acknowledging this group of advocates whose role it is to encourage children to have the ability to choose to change their gender. Apparently, privately, many of them acknowledge that really kids have an inability to consent to these things. I have to believe that's right. And I note the glaring discordance between discussions about TikTok and whether children should be exposed to TikTok or their parents need to see the TikTok algorithm, because after all, it's too explosive to permit children to be exposed to information unless we know where it came from. And these same kids can decide to saw off their breasts because they want to be somebody other than what they were born. I mean, how did we come to this crazy point in the universe where we let children be sovereign over their biological destiny, but worry about what they think at the same time? And we somehow exist in the same place at the same time without a coherent version or a sense of the human self and its capacity and potential for growth in time. I'll be looking forward to see more of the discussion of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. I mean, imagine waking up in the morning and having your wife or loved one say to you, "What are you doing today?" "I'm going to my WPATH meeting." "Oh, what's on the agenda today?" "The sovereign right of 11-year-olds to change their gender." I mean, if you really think that's a good idea when you wake up in the morning, God help us. I don't understand it, Mike.
Who's honking the horn at me?
Oh, that's just outside. Somebody's looking to take out the trash and they're thinking, hey, if we got rid of Pattis, law and legitimacy would be a lot better. I'll be down in a minute, guys. Either that or my mover. He's come. Yeah. We've come to clean out your office. We've got 30 years worth of detritus from the files that you have that you've accumulated. Let's take it away.
This report was published by what's called Environmental Progress. And I'll bring this up on the screen. The article that we led with from the New York Sun is very long. I think it's probably a 10 or a 15-minute read, and it's very well done. And so I was moved to send it to you, Norm, because I think that this is an issue that we could begin peeling apart. I suffer no delusion this morning that we are going to be able to effectively get at this and the implications of law, but it should be known that in the wake of a widespread consciousness around exactly what you were saying with respect to children being able to make medical decisions with permanent consequences and often deleterious permanent consequences to their long-term health and prospects, and are also able to do so largely without the consent of their parents, has created this counter movement among the states to outlaw and to ban transgender surgery and these procedures on minors. And there are lawsuits from, challenging these in the various states. One, namely, is Alabama, but there are also lawsuits from the private sector being launched from what are known as detransitioners. And I believe the Dillon Law Group, who one of the partners thereof is Ron Coleman. I believe the Dillon Law Group is actually representing one of those detransitioners in these lawsuits. So the impact of this release of files is that the lawsuits launched in opposition to the various states' bans on these certain procedures, and then the detransitioners lawsuits against various medical professionals, service providers, etc., are actually going to be emboldened by the revelations contained within this report, right? The things that you were talking about with respect to disclosures of internal communications, where they admit that the children that they're performing these procedures on cannot adequately consent because they can't conceptualize what the consequences truly are, that parents are none the wiser. They don't understand these sorts of things. And then often there are pre-existing conditions, certain psychoses, certain gender dysphoria, all of these precursors that are not being treated, but the procedure is being used as the treatment therefore, rather than analyzed as a presumptive cause and a proximate cause of those sorts of conditions that they're seeing in the psychiatry realm, Norm.
And you're like talking so fast. I'm about 3 sentences behind by the time you wrap up. There's like, what did you just say? I mean, excuse me. Maybe I'm coming down with a cold. I mean, I've looked at all of this, and I understand the notion of gender dysphoria. But I hear that gender is socially constructed, and yet I see biology, and I'm aware that there are among species same-sex issues, but I'm just not aware of a species where other than the human species, where somebody will say, I was born one way and I need to become the other. Now, maybe that's just because ducks can't perform surgery and we can, but it strikes me as odd to have evolved to the point where we think it's important to empower children to change their gender. It feels to me like we've just, we've outrun we're way over our skis. And I don't know if there's any coming back from
Well,
that.
I think there is, but again, transparency is what it ultimately starts this conversation. My personal perspective, sort of Occam's razor moment here, is that there is a big business that has developed behind these procedures in the medical profession, and the doctors and physicians that are have made it a business of their practice have everything to lose by virtue of the exposure to perhaps their departure from what we recall as the Hippocratic Oath, right? The first law there
No, I
being
hear you.
no harm.
I hear you.
And
I hear
so
you.
and so there, until such time as enough has leaked into, and again, the sort of the medical malpractice industry, right? The business of protecting physicians from what we would call frivolous lawsuits or departures from, standards of care and stuff like that, largely has built a moat and large, tall walls around legitimate scrutiny and accountability for physicians that perhaps have been departing from that Hippocratic Oath for a number of years. So I'm happy to see this. I want to take a quick detour, 30 seconds, I promise. I wanted to show off the brain on this guy. His name, what is his name here? Gregory Dolan. So Gregory Dolan is quoted in the New York Sun article, and I bring this up because I always like seeing people with talent stacks that are just like wildly out of reach for my very midwit IQ. This guy is a physician, a medical doctor. He's also a Georgetown University licensed practitioner, and he's also right now the associate justice of the Supreme Court in a country called Palau. He was quoted in the article for support, saying that the report that we were just talking about is actually adequate evidence that could put physicians in hot water. Now, I don't know what his connection is to the reporter and the journalist that was doing the research, but I just thought this was crazy. I'll bring up his resume just briefly so that we could marvel over this. But this is him. He's quoted in the article, and you can see, I mean, he's primarily an intellectual property attorney, but University of Baltimore School of Law associate professor. Right now, he's on leave because he's, I guess, a member of the Supreme Court of this, country that's out in the way west of the Pacific Ocean, right? But I just think that these are the types of people that should be opining on these things and that we should look into more. I would love to see if we can't like reach out to him and maybe have him on for a little while to
Oh,
talk.
that'd be cool. We're overdue for a long form, and certainly he represents the notion of thinking outside the box.
You want to talk about Alex Jones a little bit?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. The interview requests are starting to come in. Well, there's Alex Jones you see on the picture on the stand in Connecticut in the Sandy Hook trial, the case I handled. He also was tried for related claims in Texas involving his denial that Sandy Hook occurred. And so now HBO is about to release a broadcast called The Truth versus Alex Jones. And I've taken a look at the trailer. As I say, interview requests are coming in. Somebody wanted to know whether I'm featured in it. And I'm not. I've taken a look at it. It focuses on the Texas case. And it asks the question, how is it that Jones was able to derive the support he got from so many by denying the obvious? That is, that people were slaughtered at the Sandy Hook school, at the Sandy Hook school shooting in December, I believe, of 2024, or maybe 2012. And the answer is by no means obvious. And so I look forward to seeing that interview request. In fact, I'm trying to break out from the law into other expressions, and I'm discussing with somebody in Hollywood about ways to perform other than on a lawyerly stage. And the suggestion came back to write and perform in a presentation about my career in the law, something like People versus Pattis. And so, it would be a 3-act presentation beginning with my being placed on trial in the court of public opinion for my involvement in certain cases, the presentation of the case, then the deliberations and the verdict, with my acting out all the roles. And this proposal has been made to me. And as I've mulled it over, I thought, well, Exhibit 1 would be, why did you represent Alex Jones? Why did you go all in on this man? And I have my reasons, and it's certainly cost me and it's benefited me in other ways. Another case that I might have to give an account of myself on would be the Proud Boys. And, extraordinary phone calls came in yesterday, from people in Texas, where I will soon go down on a fundraising tour for J6 people and candidly my firm. Do you think that Merrick Garland is going to be prosecuted by the next administration? And I'm like, for what? For his war crimes. And there's no war crimes. There are statutes that define criminal offenses. There is conduct that takes place in the world. And administration selects prosecutors who evaluate the conduct. And the conduct either does or doesn't, in their light, satisfy the proof of the elements of a crime. Then they must choose to prosecute, get an indictment, and go to court and try to win their case. This is criminal procedure. These are constitutional rights. But the notion that there is such a belief and a hunger and anger in some parts of the country about Merrick Garland, that Merrick should be prosecuted for his war crimes, to me is profoundly depressing. And so I will watch the Alex Jones documentary with an eye toward understanding that level of anger and rage, because the country is really being torn apart. And I don't know where we the people have gone.
Well,
I don't know what we the people are becoming.
I'm not very optimistic about what you'll learn by watching the documentary. We can play the trailer if you'd like. We don't have to.
Nah, I don't want to. The trailer doesn't do much.
Like I said, this feels like a lobotomized version of what actually happened in the Sandy Hook defamation cases. And to that end, this, to me, sort of the meta story about this is more about the fact that Alex Jones has been made bigger. His presence and his influence has only grown, subject to uh, anything that could happen with this documentary. But those who already are skeptical of Alex Jones or don't like Alex Jones or anti-Alex Jones, whatever you want to call it, are not going to learn anything through this. It's only going to confirm certain biases that are commonly held on that side. To that end, I think that this is an attempt, the timing of this in an election year, and then aligning Alex Jones. I fully expect that this will align Alex Jones with and make him sympathetic to the populist platform that Trump represents. They're going to do everything in their power to link him and his influence to those who need to be depersoned or to be pilloried in the media leading up to the election, to ensure that he is a brand that is toxic to those who are otherwise polling quite well.
So I want to end. Thank you, and then let's watch it with an aim in mind. I mean to this piece is published, by the way, that we have on screen on the Hollywood Reporter, which I never thought I'd utter these words aloud, but I'm going to take a subscription to the Hollywood Reporter. I've begun to spend enough time out there and was invited back again in just under a month, this time to work with a group of lawyers, because I may resurface at the Jerry Spence Method Trial College in Wyoming. And I want to end today on that note, on a particular note, and with something like a prayer of gratitude. I told some of you who listened yesterday that my life suddenly as an older and maybe even just plain out old man is in transition. I'm not getting anything sawed off as near as I can tell, but I am temporarily without a home. My wife and I have decided that after 30 years that we will move in different directions. And I've been given an unbelievable gift by a lifelong friend who has opened his family to me. And permitted me to stay with them for as long as I like. I've been there for a week, and we've talked about this and whether this is something they really want to do, whether it's something I really want to do. And the generosity of spirit. This is Jim Nugent. He's been a guest on the show. The generosity of spirit that his family has expressed to me, and their willingness to take me in, and their open arms in the presence of a turning point, a crisis in my life, and their love, their unconditional love of me, is something I don't deserve. And I say this to all of you, and maybe I deserve it all too well, but I say this to all of you because the grace of loving kindness, of hospitality, is something that is within us all to give and to receive. And, it's hard for a proud man to say, I need the grace. It may or may not be difficult for another proud man to extend it. But I wanted to publicly note the transforming power of giving and the transforming power of not being too proud to receive, and be thankful for that publicly, because it is indeed a good thing. I know Cicero wrote an essay in praise of friendship years ago. I tried to read it and I thought, Frenchmen's. But when I needed one most, some appeared, and I feel very much like the gods are caring for me in the form of these people, and I give thanks.
Well, I was gonna make a quick joke about you experiencing houselessness, but you made it too deep and poetic for me to really even go down that.
Oh, go ahead. Jokes are good.
But I mean, that was really it. That was it. You're experiencing houselessness of your own accord. But I
Sure.
think that, you know, my quick feedback to that, Norm, is that you shouldn't be surprised, although you appear to be, I think, startled in a good way. But it's obvious to anybody that knows you, spends any real time with you, understands you to be a very deep and abiding person. And while you are a bull in a china shop when it comes to representing clients, and there's no links that you will not go to advocate on their behalf, when the crushing weight of the government is at their front doorstep. I think that translates into your personal life, into a sincerity that is altogether lacking in today's world, especially for young people like me. We're looking for people to put our trust in and to learn from, and you could be no better teacher. I think it's no surprise at all. And you're welcome in North Carolina anytime, you know that.
I'll be down soon. We talked about that yesterday. So, you know, I urge those of you, I'll write my essay, one of my essays this week on Homer. And whether the title will be the following or not is up to Mike. But some of the most powerful words you'll ever hear in the English language are, come sit by the fire with me. Tell me your tale. And if you'll but take the time to open your heart to somebody talking to you in that way, you might transform your own world and theirs. Because the gift of giving is the gift of loving, and learning to give it and to accept it is a special form of grace. So AMF Yo-Yo, I'm grateful for the world that we find ourselves in, and the multiple acts of grace I've received. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Mike, how do people find us?
You can find us on the interwebs, on those things that they're trying not to ban right now. We're not on TikTok. They wouldn't have us. But we are on YouTube, we're on X, and we're on Rumble. You can find us at LawPod Daily, lawpoddaily.com to subscribe to the Afro-referenced newsletter. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you find premium podcasts. AMF, Yo-Yo. AMF.
AMF. Talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.